Welcome to Asher and Torah Anytime. We're up to Perek Yotes, and just to recap a little about Avshalom. Avshalom was this beautiful son from David HaMelech who was born from a Eshes Yifas Toyer. He was very charming and he was very shrewd. One of the main figures who joined Avshalom's camp was Achitophel. He was the advisor, the very wise advisor from David HaMelech. David HaMelech was extremely bothered by the fact that Achitophel joined Avshalom. And at the end, he set up an implant. Hushei, his friend, who joined Avshalom's camp as an implant, and he was appointed, he was given the task to be Mefer Atzas Achitophel, to ruin Achitophel's advice. First piece of advice Achitophel gave, Avshalom listened, which was that he should bo'al pilakshe oviv. He gave him advice that he should have relations with his father's concubines, le'ene kol Yisrael, and that would mean that he's done with them. And he did that. Second piece of advice that he gave him was that he should run after David HaMelech. He should go with 12,000 soldiers, 1,000 from each Shevet that night, and Achitophel would head and kill David HaMelech. And Hushei came and he derailed that piece of advice. When he found out that they didn't follow his advice, he went home and he committed suicide. And the pasuk says in Perek Yud so he saw that his advice wasn't followed. He saddled his donkey. He went home to his city. He commanded his house. He gave them a tzava'o. He gave them a last will and testament. He took care of all of his fears. He hung himself. He died. And he was buried in the grave of his forefathers, which was an honorary way to die. He knew that if David HaMelech was going to come back, he knew his advice is going to, the fact that he wasn't listened to was going to mean that Avshalom is going to have a downfall. He knew David was going to come back, he's going to kill him. So he chose to set up his affairs, take care of everything, and then he would die in an honorary way, that he would be buried in the grave, in the plot of his forefathers. So Chazal say, Baba Basra, and I'm just saying this because it's connected with Shuas, Vaitzavel Beisoy. Talmud Rabbanon, Shloisha Devarim Tziva Achitophel, as one of three things Achitophel commanded his children, three things that he learned, his last will and testament. One was Al Tiyu b'machloikis. He said, don't get involved in machloikis. Second was Al Timridu b'malchus Beis David. Don't fight against the kingdom of David HaMelech. V'yoyim tov shel Atzeres, and the Yom Tov of Atzeres, which presumably means Shavuos, or it may mean Shmini Atzeres. Barur zaru chitim. Barur, if you see that the air is clear, you see that it's nice weather. Zaru chitim, plant wheat. And the question everybody asks, like the first two things make sense. It makes sense to, you learned a very expensive lesson, don't get involved in machloikas. I'm telling you kids, before I commit suicide, Al timridu b'malchus Beis David, but where in the world does Yom Tov shel Atzeres, Barur zaru chitim come in? So the simple translation means that he told them, stay farmers. Don't get involved in politics. That was the first layer of the pshat. My friend Yossi Wurzburger brought me to a whole new understanding, a whole new comprehension here, that if you go into the ancient world, and we were talking about it, that the secret of learning Nach is to understand the context of what was going on back in those days. If you want to understand the pshat, there's tremendous practical meaning in it. And here's how it goes. He says in the ancient times, chitim, there was a huge difference between planting wheat, which is chitim, and sa'odim, which is barley. Barley is a much easier crop. That means it takes much less water. And he told me that he actually researched it, that sa'odim needs less water in order to grow a crop. Chitim needs a lot more water, and it needs water at specific times. There's yoyde or malkosh. When we daven for yoyde, malkosh. Yoyde is the first water that comes down. When you plant chitim, first you need yoyde, you need a little water to come down, and that's what begins the breakdown of the wheat, that it should begin to take root. Then you need malkosh, you need tons of water to come down. And then chitim grow. Chitim is the primary food. That's the chashav food. Sa'odim is ma'achal behemis. Sa'odim is like a lesser level of grain. I mean, humans can eat it, but it's not as chashav as chitim. The reason being that chitim took much more work and much more effort. So, again, in the ancient world where there's no irrigation systems and you don't have jets flying over and dumping water and you don't have all these systems, you always took a risk. When it came time to plant, you're going to plant a crop. Either you're going to be planting chitim or you're going to be planting sa'odim. If you plant sa'odim, you have a much bigger chance that it's going to you're gonna reap produce, but it's not such a chashuv produce. It doesn't have that value. Chitim, it's much bigger risk, but there's a much bigger return on investment. So Achitophel, there was common wisdom by farmers, and the wisdom was that if by Atzeres, which let's say it means Shmini Atzeres, which is the beginning of when you plant, it means you plant by Shmini Atzeres, all the Yom Tovim in Chazal, all the Yom Tovim are based on harvest. It's you make a festival when you plant the harvest, you make a festival when you reap the harvest. Shavuos is primarily the festival that after Pesach, which is the end of the equinox, by Shavuos, that's when you get to reap the actual, that's when you start bringing that's the whole, all the Sviris Oimer is that you're counting the Oimer and you're actually going to start bringing the Chitim. So Yom Tov Shel Atzeres, the common knowledge by farmers were that if it's butter, if you see the weather is good, Zaru Chitim, plant Chitim. You might find out later that it stops to rain, and then you regret it, and you say, Yoish, I should have planted Sa'odim. But still the common advice was, take the risk, because even though you might go through a roller coaster, in the end, it's kedai to take the risk. That's when you know. If by Atzeres it's borrowed, go with the Chitim. Achitophel was telling his kids something that he learned the hard way in his own life. He said, look, Malchus Beis David, that was borrowed. That was like, you were on the winning team. In the beginning, in your initial vision of the future, it was like, David HaMelech is going to be the winning team. Eventually there was bumps along the way. Achitophel jumped ship. He said, okay, this is not working out, let me go over to the Sa'odim. Let me go over to Avshalom. The end was that what happened was Avshalom didn't work out. So the last piece of advice, he said, listen to the simple farmers. If by Atzeres, if in your beginning initial vision, you have a vision of where you want to go, stay that course. Because there's difficulties along the way, don't jump ship and they'll say, hey, I'm out. Now if you go into the next level, what really happened was that Avshalom also jumped ship. Because what happened was Avshalom took Achitophel for an advisor. Avshalom gave him good advice. Avshalom was the prime advisor. David HaMelech was afraid of Achitophel's advice. And everybody knew that Achitophel's advice is like the Urim V'Tumim. If Avshalom would have followed through on his initial advice that he took from Achitophel all the way through, he would have won. But Avshalom didn't listen because Chushireya came in with a new piece of advice. So what really happened was this was a double trip. Achitophel didn't stay his course to stick it out to David HaMelech. He thought he's going to find there's something better out there. Avshalom also didn't follow course. And he jumped ship on Achitophel. And he took somebody else's advice. And at the end, that's nasty. So he said, listen, I want to teach you something. Atzeres barur zaru chitim. If you're in the beginning, whatever it's clear to you, where you see your GPS destination, you have an intention where you want to get to, stay on the main road. Don't go off. That's what I learned from my life. Now, if you want to connect that to Shavuos, to the Atzeres and Shavuos, that's really the ultimate message of Matan Torah. You could go into a whole trip. That's why David HaMelech's Yartzeit is on Matan Torah. That's really the message. Ultimately, what the story is trying to tell you, what Achitophel said advice regarding Torah, is that every single person, either Klal Yisrael as a nation, we had a Matan Torah, we saw a beautiful future where we're going to get to, we're going to bring world redemption, we're going to make this into along the road there's bumps, stay on the main course. Don't go off the exit. Whoever goes off the exit, goes off their own exit. Because they didn't follow the advice of the simple farmers, of the Bria, which says, Yom Tov Shel Atzeres Barur Zaru Chitim. That was an amazing insight that I thought. So back on Perek Yotes, we're up to the part of the story where Avshalom gets killed by Yoav. Yoav is David HaMelech's general, he's his nephew. Yoav is like, on the one hand, he's very loyal to David, but on the other hand, he has a mind of his own. And when he thinks that things should be done a certain way for political reasons, he does it. He did it with Avner, and now he did it again with Yoav. He killed Yoav. Finally, the message gets over to David HaMelech. Vayirgaz HaMelech vayal el Aliyas Ashar. He got Vayirgaz HaMelech. he became nechrad. He went into a state of fear. He goes on top of the entryway, and he began crying. That's what he said, going back and forth. He said, B'ni Avshalom, B'ni. He said, my son Avshalom, my son, B'ni Avshalom, my son Avshalom. I wish I would have died instead of you. Avshalom, B'ni, B'ni. Here he says it 5 times. You go a little further in the Psukim. 8 times he cried, B'ni Avshalom, B'ni. And Chazal say that the 8 times that he cried B'ni, 7 times as he took him out of 7 layers of hell, 7 Maduri Shel Ganem, until he brought him into Gan Eden. And we spoke about it, that there's also a very deep message. You have to understand Avshalom is the worst OTD son that can possibly be. There's nobody worse than Avshalom. Avshalom is the guy who killed Amnon.
2022?
Much worse than 2022. He killed Amnon, so he murdered somebody. His father brought him back, against all popular opinion. He brought him back. He quote unquote made peace with him. And then Avshalom went and he overthrew his own father, took the Sanhedrin, took everybody with him. He took his advisor, listened to Achitoffel's first advice. He was Baal Pilakshe Orev Le'enei Kol Yisrael on the rooftop. He did the worst possible thing you can do. He was Baal Pilakshe Orev. And everybody knew that him and David HaMelech, there's no return. There's nothing that can be done in order to rectify this relationship any longer. And he went out with an entire army to quote unquote kill his father. And still, David HaMelech says, deal with the nar, deal with this youth. He looked at him like a nar, like a kid who was acting out, like a teenager who was acting out. He said, deal with him politely, with pity, kindly. And Yoav, who's the general, they capture him, they get him. He says, come on. And he kills him. And here he's crying, B'ni Avshalom, B'ni. Why? Anybody normal would say, it doesn't make any sense. Why are you crying over him? The concept here is that David HaMelech in all of Nach, this is a theme throughout Nach, always takes responsibility for what he did. That means he knew that Avshalom was a child of the Eshes Yifas Toyed. He knew how Avshalom was born. He also knew what Chazal say, that if you go for Eshes Yifas Toyed, you're going to have a Ben Soyed murdered. He knew that Avshalom was born with certain characteristics and tendencies and certain just traits that made him be Avshalom. And he always he rewinded it back to himself. He also knew what happened with Bathsheba. He knew what happened with Uriah Hitti. He knew what happened with Nosson Hanavi. He knew the whole deal. So whenever things happened, that's what happened with Shimi Ben Gedi. He said, Hashem Amalek Halel. He always rewinded it back and he said, I'm responsible. He said, that's why he said, Miyiten Musi ani sachtecha. I wish I would have died instead of you, Avshalom. Because he said, what did you do wrong that you're getting killed? It's my actions and I'm responsible for what happens in my own life. You don't have to go around going around blaming and saying he's at fault, why did he do this? There's a message over here. I have to learn the message. So when he said B'ni, B'ni 8 times and he took responsibility of everything Avshalom did 8 times back, he brought him into Gan Eden. Means that's how you take yourself out of hell. A lot of times you're in a place of hell because you blame people. You say, my Rebbe's at fault, my parents are at fault, this is at fault, that's at fault. Everybody has a whole, they have a whole package, a whole folder of whoever is at fault. And when you take responsibility in that, and you say, B'ni, Avshalom, B'ni, 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 you say, it's my son, it's me, then you go into a place of redemption. That's how you go into an inner place of redemption, when you rewind the stuff in your life that you don't like, and you take responsibility for it yourself, and you say, hello, shalom, Hashem, I'm listening, and the more you listen, the more you go out of hell into a place of Gan Eden. Vayugad leYoav. So, Vayugad leYoav v'nei HaMelech boicha v'yisav el Avshalom. They came to the king.
Even during life.
You better believe it's true during life. It's a very, all of Novi has the most practical messages in real life living. Vayugad leYoav v'nei HaMelech boicha v'yisav el Avshalom. They said the king is crying, he's mourning al Avshalom, even though technically you're not misabel on Haruge Malchus. And it's definitely not on like a Ben Seder who was a murdered b'malchus in the biggest way. So Yoav killed him fair and square. There's no question that Yoav killed him rightfully. So really there should have been a victory and everybody's mourning. Everybody's hearing that the king is depressed over his son. He's mourning over his son. But really there should have been a victory parade that they overthrew the rebellion. The king was left with 600 soldiers when he escaped. He's going to be able to come back home. And instead of it being a victory, everybody's mourning. The people who were really heroes were sliding back into their tents. They were like slipping away, like embarrassed almost that the king is mourning, and it was like a failure. And the Melech covers his face like the way Avshalom would. All he's on repeat. B'ni Avshalom, B'ni B'ni, B'ni Avshalom, B'ni B'ni. And he's making this inner introspective work. He's taking responsibility. He's connecting that it's my son, it's mine, I own it, it's my son, I love you, I always loved you, I wish I could have died instead of you. It's all happening because of things I did, and he's not blaming. But this doesn't align with the Bria. It doesn't align with the facts on the ground. You have people who were Moshe Nefesh in order to save you from a rebellion. Yoav goes into the king's home and he says, are you nuts? He says, you're humiliating all of the warriors, all of your soldiers who killed themselves for you. Es nefesh bonecha v'noisecha v'nefesh noshecha v'nefesh pilakshecha li'ahavas enecha v'lisnes avecha. Your warriors who killed themselves to save your life, the life of your children, your wives, your palakshim, they went all out for you. And you're loving your enemies and you're hating your friends. It's a Mordecai story, this. It's like you're meeting the conflict of what happens when people do inner work in order to be masakin themselves with the reality of how it looks on the outside. It's two different universes, and here you meet it, Navi clashing like in the most stark way possible. You have somebody saying, B'ni Avshalom B'ni. You know, he's like, in Lahavil you would say, he's like sitting by a therapist, and he's realizing and he's taking responsibility. He's saying, B'ni Avshalom, and he's making his brothers out in the woods. He's saying, B'ni Avshalom B'ni. And then you have thousands of people who almost died or did die in order to save you, feeling like they're 2 cents. You know what you're saying with you mourning, with you going with your face covered? You don't care about your sarim and avadim. You don't care about your soldiers. You don't care about your people. Because everybody knows, let's say Avshalom would have stayed alive. All of us would have died. You would have been just fine with that. You would have been fine that Avshalom should live and all of us should die. What's beautiful about Navi and why it's so important for us to learn Navi is because you meet conflicts that come up in our lives today that we don't have real resolutions for. This is the real this is where the action is at. We have this all the time in our lives. And if you think about it, Yoav is actually saying Dvarim Shel Tam. He's saying something which makes a lot of sense. But you also can identify with David HaMelech saying B'ni Avshalom B'ni. Now get up and go outside to the people. I swear by the name of God that if you don't go out and you don't, tell the people that yes, we did it. Fix this. This evil of having your people feeling that the king dumped them is going to be worse than all the bad things that happened to you in your life. You're setting yourself up for the biggest failure you've ever had before. I'm just so stuck on this. I'm going to go there again. In today's world, this happens to people all the time, that your rachni is dika avoida, and your inner neshama that you're trying to be mesakin doesn't align with the metzias outside of you, and this is a topic which is never discussed. You should know it's discussed openly in Shmuel, Beis, Perek, Yotes, in a very stark way where you actually, if you think about it, you're stuck. There's no rational way out of this. And we have to know that many times in life we come to these situations where there is no rational way out. You're emotional. In the Psukim there's no rational way out. It's just describing somebody who's stuck. On the one hand he's saying B'ni Avshalom B'ni, and Chazal say that he's elevating him up from hell up to heaven. He's taking responsibility. And then you have a general who's telling you, you can't do this to the people who are so loyal to you. And he's right.
What could he do in quiet?
Vayakem HaMelech. Just come along in the story. A lot of things in life don't have resolutions. Just come along the way it's described here in the Navi. Vayakem HaMelech v'yeshev b'shar. He goes out and he accepts what Yoav says, and he sits out there with the people. U'lecholom higidu. They told everybody. Everybody saw that he's sitting on by the entry. Leimer hine HaMelech Yoshev b'shar v'yaveh kol am l'fnei HaMelech v'yisro l'fnei HaMelech. Everybody comes. They come before the king. They come down to see him. The king is back with the people. V'yisro nos ish lahalav. And the people who were with Avshalom, they pack out. They escape. Now the king is back, and he's going to take revenge on all of the traitors. Vayhi chala am nodon. So now there starts a debate between B'chol Shifti Yisrael, between all of the tribes of the Yidden. Now people start making their own introspection. People start making their own cheshbon nefesh now. You have to understand, the rebellion's over, and now you are on the wrong side of the rebellion. So they say, they say, look, this is our king. He saved us from all of our enemies. He saved us from the Pelishtim. He never escaped. He never ran away. He was never a coward. Here he ran away before Avshalom came. If you remember the story, as soon as he heard Avshalom is coming, he ran away. And we spoke about it, that the reason why he ran away is because he knew that this is payback. Because Nasna Navi told him that there's going to be payoff and consequences for the story of Uri Achiti. And he ran away because he didn't want there should be a civil war in Yerushalayim, that it should be destroyed. So people were starting connecting the dots, and they said, it's not like he was a coward from Avshalom. He ran away in order to protect us, that there shouldn't be a civil war, that we shouldn't get decimated and killed. And this Avshalom, who we anointed, we took Avshalom on us, he died on his first battle. And you see that David HaMelech has something going for him. Something high. There's some higher power that's backing him. So why are we being quiet now? Why aren't we doing moves to mend the rift and come back to the king? Why are we're going to stay now? We're going to stay dead right? We're going to insist that we were right? I mean, hello, it's over. VaHamelech David Sholach El Tzadoik ve'el Aviyaser HaKahanim Leimer Dabru Ziknei Yehuda Leimer. So David HaMelech, I guess, senses what's going on, and he wants to bring the kingdom back together. So he does the first move to reach out, to extend the olive branch to his rebels, to those who went out against him. So he reached out. He sent Tzadoik, which was the Kohen, and Aviyaser HaKahanim, Dabru Ziknei Yehuda Leimer. Go to the Ziknei Yehuda. And he said, Lama tiyu acharoinim la'ashav HaMelech as Beis. He said, you're my people, you're Shevet Yehuda. Why should you be the last ones to come? Udvar kol Yisrael bo'al HaMelech. Everybody wants to come back al Beisoy. Achai atem, atzmi avsari atem. You're my Shevet Yehuda. You're my people. So Lama tiyu acharoinim. Why should you be the last ones? La'ashav HaMelech. Come back to me first. David HaMelech is playing on the conversations going on between the Shvatim, which is that we got to come back. He reaches out to his people first. He said, you be the first ones to come back. And Amasa, he is his nephew, who was the general from Avshalom. He tells Amasa, who's the general of Avshalom, he said, you're my nephew. From Abigail, my sister Abigail. He says, I'm going to anoint you and appoint you that you should be instead of Yoav. So here, he's starting to settle his score with Yoav. He had a long-standing score with Yoav. Yoav is the guy who killed Avner when he wanted Avner. Remember the story with Avner, with Shaul's general? Yoav is the one who killed Avshalom. He's settling the score now, and he gives it over to his opponent general, and he says, "You're going to take the place." I'm pretty sure Yoav is not going to take this lightly, but we'll leave that for the next Perek. Vayatas levav kol ish Yehuda ke ish echad. And David gets the entire Shevet Yehuda on his side. Vayishluch el hamelech shuv ata v'chol avadecha. And they sent a message to the king, Shuv ata v'chol avadecha. Come back to Jerusalem, come back to the hometown, come back to the capital city. He comes to the Yarden, v'Yehuda ba Gilgala, and the people from Yehuda came to Gilgal. So there's an entourage coming from Yerushalayim, which is the Shevet of Yehuda, towards to greet the king to come back home, in order to bring him over to Jordan, to bring him back to Jerusalem. Now Shimi ben Geri, who was the head of the Sanhedrin, who was the one who was throwing stones and rocks, belittling the king, telling him all of his faults, telling him, Ish Domamata b'nei B'liyal, whatever he said, every single averi he ever did, he said, you scum of the earth, you sinner, you bloody l'chaim. Vayimai Shimi ben Geri ben Nayimini Yashu b'Bachurem. Shimi ben Geri who came from Bachurem, which if you remember, one of David HaMelech's main guys wanted to kill Shimi ben Geri, and David HaMelech said, no, Hashem Amalek Aleil, God is the one who told him curse. Vayeredim ish Yehuda likras HaMelech David. Vayeredim ish Yehuda, he came with the people of Yehuda, the Shevet Yehuda, he's with them, likras HaMelech David, to ask him to forgiveness. Ve'elef ishmi ben Yamin, he brings 1,000 people from the camp of Ben Yamin, which was from Shaul. Which Shimi ben Geri was from Shaul's camp. And he was a loyalist to Shaul. And now he brings 1,000 people from Shaul in order to show that he's going to be machniya, and he's going to do tshuva, and he's going to beg forgiveness. Not only that, but tziva, nar bei Shaul, v'chamesh asad banav, he brings tziva. Now if you remember the story of Tziva, Tziva was this backstabbing servant of Mipi Boishes, who brought David HaMelech all of those donkeys, full of food when he ran away. And he backstabbed his master when he asked him what's up with Mipi Boishes. Mipi Boishes was the crippled son from Yonasan, who David HaMelech took care of out of his loyalty to Yonasan. And David HaMelech asked Tziva, where is your master Mipi Boishes? And he said, oh, he's waiting for the downfall of Avshalom and your downfall, that he should be able to take back the Malucha from Shaul. And then David HaMelech believed Mipi Boishes, and Chazal say he believed Lashon Hara, and he gave away all of Mipi Boishes' nechasim, all of his properties, he gave it over to Tziva. So now Shimi ben Geri, when he's coming to beg forgiveness from David HaMelech, he takes along with him 1,000 people from Binyamin, plus Tziva nar Beis Shaul v'chameshes asabana v'esen avad of Itoy, in order to find favor that he should accept him back. Because at this point in time, Tziva is on David HaMelech's good side, because he's the one who brought him over all of the schore, all of the equipment and all of the supplies that he should be able to last. They cross over the Yarden while he's still on the other side of the Jordan. Not only that, the people from Shimi brought boats. They brought boats on the Jordan, so that when the king's going to come, he shouldn't have to walk through the water, he should be able to go through on these little boats to take him over. In order to kiss up to him. Shimi ben Geri so Shimi ben Geri prostrates himself in front of the king. Please, my king, don't consider my sin. Don't remember the sin that I did to you. When you left Jerusalem, that I spoke against you and I cursed you. And I'm begging you, please don't keep it on your heart. I know that I sinned. I came today Rishon the whole Beis Yosef Laredes Likas Adonai HaMelech. I came before all of the Beis Yisrael. I called before everybody that they also sinned, and I sinned more than everybody else. And I'm coming here to beg your forgiveness. And if you're going to accept my forgiveness, then everyone knows that you're going to accept their forgiveness as well. Bottom line is, he buffered it up the best he could, and he kissed up to David HaMelech the best he could. And Avishai ben Tzruya, he was the warrior who was with David HaMelech, who wanted to cut off his head when he was cursing him. And he said, because he's playing this game that he's asking you forgiveness after he lost, he doesn't deserve to die. He cursed the anointed one. He was a murdered by Malchus. He did the worst sin. So now he lost. He's coming to beg forgiveness. Like, why are you even considering it? What fight is there between me, B'nai Tzruya? That you should come here to cause me to do harm, and something that's going to cause me to lose my melucha. Is now the time that I should start killing people? Because if I'm going to kill him, then everybody's going to think that I'm going to be killing anybody who was a rebel against me, and I'm going to ruin my chances of everybody coming back. We have time. It's not the time now. It's not the time. You know that today is like the first day of my malucha. I'm starting from scratch, and now I should go start killing people and put myself in a place of danger. Now, I'm just saying as a side note, at the end of the game, David HaMelech keeps cheshbon with Shimon ben Gedi. At the end, he had Shlomo HaMelech made a whole thing with Shimon ben Gedi. He says, now to leave Yerushalayim, and he left and he killed him. He kept cheshbon with him. But for now, David HaMelech is very shrewd, and he's like, take it easy. Now is not the time.
Big picture.
We have big picture. Now is not the time. V'yemer HaMelech and Shimri, lo yisamus, you won't die. V'yishav alei HaMelech, that he won't kill him. The David HaMelech won't kill him. U'mipiboishes ben Shaul, and Mipiboishes was the son of Yonasan, the son of Shaul, who was the crippled son who got dropped when they were running away by the Muhammad. Yad Adik Ras HaMelech, he comes before the king to Jerusalem, to Yerushalayim, v'lo yasa raglov. He didn't wash his feet, v'lo yasa shvamoy. He didn't fix his beard. V'ez begodav lechibeis l'min hayom lo ches HaMelech ad hayom asher ba b'shalom. He was so devastated that his master was exiled, that he didn't touch his mustache, and he didn't wash himself. He was like a vagabond, like a homeless guy. He let himself be. He was in an extreme state of aveilus because his master was exiled. Ad hayom asher ba b'shalom. He was devastated. This is a terrible story. This Vahiki vo Yerushalayim. It was when David HaMelech came back to Yerushalayim. Mipiboishes came. Likras HaMelech. Vayomer HaMelech. Lama lo yalachta imi Mipiboishes. Why didn't you come along with me like all of my other loyal people? Which is what Tziva backstabbed him with. And here Chazal say terrible things. Vayomer Adoni HaMelech. Avdi Rimani. He said, my slave, my Eved, Tziva, fooled me. He went without me knowing. Ki Amar Avdecha, because Tziva told me, because I told Tziva, Ech b'shol yachamoid. Tie for me the saddle, ve'erkav aleh, I'm going to come along, ve'elech as HaMelech, I'm going to go. Ki pisech avdecha, because I'm a cripple. I can't go myself. And he went on his own, and he left me behind. And not only didn't he do what I had told him, he spoke Lashon Hara on me, and he spoke Rechilas, El Adoni HaMelech, and he said things that would never dawned on me. Adoni HaMelech Kamalach Alekim, but my master, you're like a Malach Alekim. You know what's true. And I believe that you're not going to do what's not true and what's not right. Kilahoya called Beis Avi. Because I know that really my entire lineage is Chayav Misa, because I'm from Shaul's kingdom. Because my grandfather Shaul was Erodif the king, and not only didn't you take Nekama, you didn't take revenge, you didn't kill me. You took me on your palace and you brought me on your table. You gave me to eat. You took care of me. You sustained me. Mal yeshli oid tzedakah. What other tzedakah? What else can I even ask? What chuz do I have? V'lizek oid al melech. I don't deserve anything. I'm a grandson of your moidet, of your antagonist. Why are you speaking more? Why are you talking so much? Now, initially when Mephibosheth came, he said, "Hine lecho kol Hashem Mephibosheth," and here he pulls back and he says, "Amarti ata v'tziva tachliku es asada." Therefore, I said that ata v'tziva tachliki es asada, that you and Tziva should split the inheritance, should split your fields, should split your wealth. Chazal say, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, Gemara in Shabbos, B'shor she'amar David leMephibosheth ata v'tziva tachliku es asada. Because David HaMelech, what happened was that David HaMelech still believed somewhat what Tziva told him. Why? Because Tziva did him a favor. Tziva came and he brought all of these chamorim full of goodies. So he felt indebted to Tziva. So even though he pulled back from believing Tziva all the way and taking away Mephibosheth's entire wealth, his entire property, he pulled back halfway. But really, he should have pulled back all the way. But he was bribed in a sense because Tziva did him a favor. So he only pulled back halfway because at the end game, Tziva Taka spoke Lashon Hara, but he actually delivered him what he needed in his time of need. And Chazal say that B'shor she'amar David leMephibosheth ata v'tziva tachliku es asada yotzes habasko v'amra loy rechavam v'yeravam yachelku es hamelucha. That Rechavam and Yeravam are going to split your kingdom. Because he believed, he accepted to a certain extent the Lashon Hara of Tziva. And Chazal learned from here how much you have to be aware never to accept Lashon Hara, because David HaMelech paid a terrible price for accepting Tziva's Lashon Hara. Vayomer Mephibosheth el HaMelech Gam as hakal yikach. I want you to know that even if you give everything to Tziva, I'm not afraid. I'm okay. As long as you came back. As long as you came back in peace, I'm okay. Turn me back into a pauper. Give away everything. I'm just happy that you came back. So this is at least it's a message of at least it's a message of taking a double, taking a step back, take a double take. Slow down when you hear Lashon Hara, especially if when the person who's bringing you Lashon Hara is doing you a huge favor. That's where the trick comes in. When the person who's bringing you Lashon Hara is saving you, which is what Tziva did under the circumstances, now, if you remember back in the day when David HaMelech needed humanitarian aid, which was part of Chushireh's idea, which was that everyone's going to cross, that he had time to regroup, there was three people who came and gave support for David HaMelech humanitarian aid. One of the three who helped him set up shop, which was actually the downfall of Avshalom, which was Barzilai Hagilodi. Yarad Miroiglim, he comes down from Miroiglim, Vayaver es HaMelech Hayadin Shalcha es Hayardan. He came to escort David HaMelech back to his hometown now that the humanitarian crisis is over. He's going back. He escorts him, and he did him a huge favor. Uvarzilai Zakem Oid ben Shvoinim Shalno. And Varzilai was very old, he's 80 years old. Uchil Kalas HaMelech B'Shivaso. He sustained the king when he was a fugitive. He was an extremely wealthy man. Come along with me, and I'm going to support you in Jerusalem. And Barzillai told the king, he said, look, what's the point of me coming along with you? I'm an old man. How much time do I have longer to live? That I should come along with you? And what am I going to have from coming along with you? I'm 80 years old. Am I going to know the difference between this steak and that steak? Is it going to make a difference to me if you're going to give me rib steak or you're going to give me flanken? That's the difference in my life. Is going to make a difference to me if it's Cabernet Franc or it's Cabernet Sauvignon. It doesn't make a big difference to me. At this stage in my life, it doesn't make a big difference. Am I going to, I'm so old, you're going to have mashurim, you're going to have musicians, is it going to make a difference to me? How much can I hear from the music that I'm going to be playing that it's worth it for me to come back? And I'm just going to be a burden on you, that you're going to have to take care of me. Therefore, I'm going to go a little, I'm going to be malava you, I'm going to escort you, and I'm going to go back home. And why should you do me this favor? I did you a little favor that I gave you some humanitarian aid. Let me return back and let me die in my hometown. In the graves of my parents. He said, here's my son, Chimom. Let him Yavidim Adoni Amelech Vasar Yasar Shetoy B'Einecha. He's the next generation. You take care of the next generation. Chimom. Amelech Iti Yavid. Chimom. Let Chimom come along with me. Now, even if you wouldn't ask me, I would have done it anyway. Vani Yasar Yasar Toy B'Einecha. V'chalash Tifchar Alai. I'm going to help him out. Everything that I would have done for you, I'm going to do for him. Because I want to pay back the greatness, the goodness, the kindness you did me. They went over the Yarden. So the Melech kissed Barzillai and he blessed him. And Barzillai went back to his hometown. And here a new argument begins. Now don't forget that the Shevet Yehuda came to greet him, right? They were the ones who listened to David, and they came right away to greet David HaMelech. And a part of Yisrael, which is the other Shvatim. And here there starts a conflict. Everybody's coming to the king. Why did you tell the people from Yehuda to come greet you, to take you back? So the people from Yehuda said, you know why the king called us to bring him back? Because he's from Shevet Yehuda. He's our kinsman. Why are you upset that we came first? Did we take something from the king? Did we eat from him? Did he give us any gift? We just came to greet him. Why are you making a big deal? So the people from Yisrael, which is the other Shvatim, told the people from Yehuda, we have 10 parts in the king. You're only one Shevet. And even though David comes from Chua, we're more. And why you be Mavaza? Why are you disgracing us? You're the minimum. You're the ma'at. We're the majority. And the people from Yehuda were more adamant, and they were more cooked up than the people of Yisrael, that they're loyalists to the people of Yisrael. And this is where this Perek ends, and next Perek this argument continues on.